Welcome to the Morse Code Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurially minded creatives in music, film, and writing. My name is Corby, and I'm hoping these conversations inspire you to push deeper into your own work, whether you're a full-time professional or just starting out on your own creative odyssey. Excited to share this conversation with a guest whose talents touch almost every facet of the music business prism. John Strohm is a musician, songwriter, attorney, and former label head who just released his fourth solo album, Something to Look Forward to. John was a key player in the Boston folk pop scene of the late 80s and 90s. He played bass for the Lemonheads, was a member of the Juliana Hatfield Trio, and co-founded the Blake Babies. In his legal capacity, John has worked with many of music's best and brightest, including Bon Iver, the Civil Wars, Dawes, and the Alabama Shakes. He also served as president of Rounder Records from 2017 to 2022. He's one of those guys you regularly see out there at the shows, as at home, catching a show from the floor as he is rocking it from the stage. He's helped a lot of artists, both formally as an attorney, but also as kind of a low-key matchmaker. John is a lot quicker to connect like minds than he is to take credit for it. If you get something out of the Morse Code Podcast, please like and subscribe. And now, here's my conversation with John Strohm. Man, thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you again.
It's great to be in your home. Thank you.
Yeah, home and studio, the East Nashville way. Well, I want to get into this, and you were such a great guest to have on the podcast because you have, through your many stations in life, been, an attorney, an artist. Let's go first, musician, artist, then attorney, and now artist again, artist throughout. But you've juggled a lot of balls and seen many versions of the artist's life. And I can't wait to hear your perspective.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Dude, I can relate.
If I have a superpower, it's self-reinvention. And I do enjoy that.
That is a good power to have for longevity. And it's one that not all, even very good artists have.
Well, if I have a superpower, it's self-reinvention. If I have a diagnosable condition, it's ADD, which I probably do, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to stay on topic. Yes, I like to be fascinated by what I'm doing. I tend to be obsessive and I tend to go all in. And my self-reinvention has been mostly out of necessity. And the one thread that connects everything is music. Mm-hmm. I'm certainly obsessive about music. So yeah, for the first 30 years of my grown-up life, like from age 14 to 30, I was laser focused on being a full-time musician.
And what kicked that off? Were your parents musical?
No, I was a sort of depressed kid. It was a little chaotic in my household when I was a kid. And my parents are amazing. They're academics.
Your dad's like a professor.
I grew up in a university town. He's a professor. My mother was a university administrator. They divorced when I was young. And I was just sort of a depressed kid. I hadn't yet found my lane when I was an adolescent, I would say. I wasn't particularly an athlete, and I loved music. I would lose myself in music. I was kind of in my head a lot, I would say. So when I was 10 or 11, I started playing drums and sort of locked myself in the basement for about 5 years and just played drums. And I emerged as a skilled drummer and was in demand. I was playing in the punk rock scene. I was playing professional gigs when I was young. So that was really how I sort of found my way to an interesting social life, at least, was playing music.
And was that in Boston area?
This is Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay,
that was my
cool.
hometown.
So not Boston yet.
Not Boston yet. So, and then at some point, sophomore year in high school, I met Frida from Blake Babies, she was my high school sweetheart. And after we'd been together a year or so, she said, well, you're obviously going to be a musician, so I want to be a musician too. So how about I play drums? So I taught her
how hard could it be?
Basics of drumming, and she really took to it quickly. And I was learning guitar, so then we became a unit in that sense. And then I went off to Berklee College of Music to pursue it for real. Mm-hmm. So the nucleus of the band that became Blake Babies, we went out there and met Juliana Hatfield as the singer and front person, my co-writer. That was really in place with Frida and me. I had a real vision for it because I'd come up in hardcore punk, and it was really mind-blowing to find my way into that world, because I'd been a adolescent going to big rock concerts, and that was my obsession. Go to the drive to Indianapolis to see Van Halen or whatever, Black Sabbath, whatever bands I was obsessed with. And then when I got into hardcore punk, it was also accessible. You could meet your heroes. You could play shows with them. My friends and I started an all ages club. We started booking touring hardcore bands.
This is in high school?
In high school.
Yeah.
And I had a friend named Scott Colburn, who went on to be a pretty important producer in Seattle, was sort of a visionary. He was a freshman in college, and he recruited a rhythm section of high school kids. I was part of that. And we had a band, and he really understood music distribution and how to get your record recorded and out and stuff like that. And so we would actually go play. I have no idea how my parents thought it was a good idea to let me get in the van with an 18-year-old and drive to Chicago to play a gig and come back a couple of days later. But they did.
That's great.
God bless them. So
this was back then. It was a lot harder to like make a record. I mean, wasn't it? It's just you couldn't. I mean, I guess CDs were just coming out. I'm thinking this is like 89. 87.
No, I'm older than you think. That's good. I graduated high school in 85. So I turned 56 this year. So I've been at this a while. But back then, was it hard to make a record? Yes, but it was much easier to make a record than you'd think if you had the network of punk rock. So you could find resources. So like, for example...
Well, were the physical media cassettes? Sorry to interject. It's just like
no. You wouldn't make records on vinyl. So the record that my high school band put out, I'm not going to share with you either the name of the band or the record because I'm embarrassed about it. But the record that my high school band put out was a 7-inch EP with 7 songs, and that was typical. So you do a 7-inch EP at 33 1/3 RPM. Didn't care about audio quality. It sounded like crap anyway. So you would just get as many songs as you could. And these are, 1.5 to 2 minute songs, like
so great
kind of tempo. And
recording live in the same room probably, or something like it.
Right. So somebody would have I remember there was like an Atari 8-track machine, or somebody would have like one of those old Tascam 4-tracks or whatever.
Yeah.
And you would record on those, and that was fine. And then also, one of my lifelong collaborators and heroes and best friends is a guy named Paul Mahern, who was the leader of a band back then called the Zero Boys, which was kind of the popular punk band from Indianapolis. So they were our big heroes. And Paul's obsession was audio. And he went to work in a studio when he was young. So he learned how to record bands. So he would help all of us figure out how to make at least decent sounding recordings. And he put out compilation records. That was another thing that was popular. This thing back then called the master tape that he put out, which was all these Midwest punk bands. These bands are legendary now, like Articles of Faith, Toxic Reason, Zero Boys, I can't remember, like Husker Du was the tip of the spear, right? But it was a really, really exciting time to be in music, and I really got the bug. So when I moved to Boston, I sort of wanted to take everything I'd learned and move it to the next level and try to have a career with it, or I don't think I thought in terms of career back then. I wanted to do it in a way so that we could tour the country and put out records, on a label or whatever. That was the plan.
Yeah.
So it was all about making that happen. And then my taste shifted and moved away from hardcore, got more interested in what we thought of at the time as pop music, not mainstream pop.
I mean, you were at the center of the Boston scene in the early 90s.
That was very
That's
lucky.
from my perspective. Yeah.
Well, I was out of there by the early 90s. I moved away from Boston by the end of 1990. So I was there for 5 years, but it's incredibly cool because I'm sure you've had an equivalent of this experience where you get involved with something and you hear somebody's music and it's like, man, this is as good as anything I've ever heard in my life. And it's just some local band. Because it was like Lemonheads and Dinosaur Jr. and Galaxy 500 and Pixies and Throwing Muses. All these bands that are now legendary bands were the local bands. And they were our friends. And we were doing it too. And there was a moment kind of toward the late 80s where bands started to get signed to deals and become professional concerns. But for a couple of years between about 86 and 88, it was all happening in the local clubs.
Let me ask you a philosophical question about that time and place. To what extent did those bands at that time, influence each other as opposed to being kind of influenced by pop music at large? I mean, were you guys aware of what was going on outside of the Boston scene? I mean, I'm sure the answer is yes, but were you kind of more into each other?
I think the jumping off point to understand this for people who are younger, especially people who are interested in indie music, is that in that time, if you played underground music, you were not pursuing a professional career.
Yeah.
Because the very ceiling of the whole thing was not particularly lucrative.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the huge bands at the time, I mean, the hugest of the huge would have been like U2 and REM, who were probably playing arenas at that point. And that was kind of edging into mainstream music, but that was still totally different from like Poison and Bon Jovi and stuff like that. You know, it was not mainstream. It was still kind of underground. But really the people within our scene who were the big bands, like what the Pixies became and what like Sonic Youth's a good example, it was still playing big clubs and maybe touring a bus, maybe touring in a van with a trailer, whatever, like doing it with a small crew, still, you know, pairing up in hotel rooms. People were not making big money back then.
Yeah.
And that all changed in the early 90s. That changed with the grunge explosion.
Who was the first of your crew to get signed and have that like life-changing opportunity? I mean, Juliana Hatfield was among the brighter stars. I mean, that's starting to touch my adolescence. I would hear her on the radio.
She and I were in the band together, of course.
Yeah.
So Blake Babies, our band together from 86 until 91 was never particularly successful, but we were full-time musicians. We would go on tour, we would make records. We went to Europe once, but I think that the thing that really kind of blew everyone's mind was Pixies, because they really were playing on the same bills as us in Boston to the same, 50 or 100 people. Mm-hmm. And then they got signed by 4AD, which is a British label, and became huge over there. And I think that got everyone thinking like, okay, maybe this is different than we thought. Maybe this is real. And then Lemonheads very soon after that. And I was the drummer in the Lemonheads back then, but it was kind of an evolved pop punk band that was still playing small shows. And they got huge when I was not in the band, when I was playing with Juliana. And then when Blake Baby split up, then I got back in the Lemonheads playing guitar. Mm-hmm. So I got to enjoy the fruits of being in a successful band because I was in the Lemonheads when they were in their most commercial phase.
Yeah.
And it was generous of Evan Dando to bring me back into the band, because I think if I had not experienced that, it would probably be a frustrating thing for me just in general to never have experienced the playing to thousands of people and touring in a bus and, playing on 5 continents or whatever. I got to do that. Yeah. And I got to see that that's not really what I want.
Yeah. So this is great. So you were how old when that kind of revelation happened?
Mid-20s.
Sure. And then, so what was the out?
Well, Lemonheads broke up in 1997. So for about 10 years after I dropped out of Berklee College of Music and went full-time in music, and there was a period of 10 years when I was really a full-time musician. And that's not to say that I was necessarily supporting myself. Mm-hmm. I was either making a record or touring or trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Moved back to my hometown, moved back to Bloomington. I met my wife when she was an undergrad in business school in Bloomington. Mm-hmm. And so Lemonheads broke up in 97, and I was making solo records by that time. I made a couple of solo records back then. And I ended up in Birmingham because that's where Heather, my then girlfriend, now wife, settled with her job. That was kind of her hometown. Mm. So I remember in 97, 98, I decided that at that time I was going to take one shot at making a record on my own to try to establish a career. Because at that point, it was possible to have a career. Alternative radio was big, rock music was big business. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give it my shot. And I did. And I made a record called Vestavia that whatever, there were labels kind of courting me and stuff like that, but it never really quite came together. And the record came out. I'm very proud of that record. I made it with my friend Ed, who was the inspiration for the record I just made. And we kind of threw it out there and it did okay. It was not something that was setting me up to have the career I wanted. At that point, I was 30 and I had met the person I wanted to spend my life with. That's my wife. We wanted to have a family together, so I had to really rethink it. Mm-hmm. So at that point, and it's important to emphasize one point around this, which is at that point, I'd done so much in music, and my mindset was such that I felt like I was a failure. Like I'd failed. Like all these goals I had, it was like, okay, I'm really gone for it. And I got to the end of it and I couldn't make a living. And I was having to go back to school, tail between my legs. It was humiliating. That's the way I felt about it.
Sure.
Which seems crazy now.
Yeah. But the perception at the moment.
You understand this though, because you get nuts when you go for something like that.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm only going to be successful if I can do this for my whole life. I can be Neil Young or whatever, which is, completely narcissistic thinking. Weird, crazy, out of your mind stuff.
It's kid thinking. It's teenage dream thinking.
Right. And when you're 30, you're too old to think that way. You would think, but you're not, because
it doesn't go away.
I know plenty of people who just kept going with diminishing returns. So I did something pretty radical at the time. And I will say that it wasn't like my girlfriend was saying, you got to figure this out. You got to support me or whatever. She was saying something that I'd never heard from anybody. And this is why it's really worked for us, I think, which was, you're thinking about this wrong. You can do whatever you want. If you feel like a failure now, figure out something else you can do, you can be successful at. Because she told me something that was important for me to hear. And this is no slight against my parents or my peers, but they weren't saying this to me. She said, you're smart enough to do whatever you want to do. Just decide what you want to do and do it. So I did something very challenging, which is I decided to go to law school. And part of that was going to law school is a way to beg out of everything, because nobody asks you any questions if you go to law school.
You got 2 years.
They don't want to know about it. They're just like, what? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's no follow-up question.
But I think I'd reached the point then when I knew I had to make a radical change, and I kind of wanted to find out a little bit more about whether I had it in me to do something that was hard. Mm-hmm. And I did. I did really well at law school. I did better than I expected, and it paved the way for me to do something really wildly different from what I'd done before, which is I got recruited into a big law firm, went in there as a young associate doing not music work, doing commercial lending and real estate and corporate work, and incredibly hard learning curve. And I learned very quickly that was not how I wanted to spend my life.
Yeah.
That was not a good fit for me. It was a good challenge. I think it's really good to kind of go on over your head and see if you can do it. And I could do it, but that's what inspired me to build something in music, because I realized that having a professional life that did not involve creativity and working with creative people was not interesting to me.
And I'm remembering an earlier conversation we had, and so correct me if I get this wrong, but the early foray into that, you were still at the larger firm, and you were kind of starting to work with bands on the side, or help me understand.
I don't think anybody really took me seriously when I was in Birmingham working at a big corporate firm when I said I wanted to work with music acts.
Yeah.
They just said, great, fine. If you can bring them in and you can get them to pay for it, then go for it. And that was when I went from a really big firm to a smaller firm. And I was primarily doing work that was representing real estate developers and stuff, which is actually a really good foundation for understanding business generally.
Just contracts.
But probably the luckiest break of my life, and I should give credit as often and as loudly as I can, while still respecting boundaries and confidentiality, is that I did a little bit of work. I had a couple of clients. I'd done a couple little indie deals and stuff like that. But the first serious client that showed up at my door was Bon Iver. Mm. And it was a 19-year-old manager who suddenly was having labels reach out because they had some music on the internet and people were responding favorably to it. And he showed up and sent me the album, and I heard it. And, it's that same thing I was talking about with the clubs in Boston. You drop a needle on that, or in that case, it was just open a digital file and listen to it. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's like, wait a minute. No, it's actually really good. And then about 20 listens later, it's like, yeah, this might be the best music I've ever heard in my life. It's like, where does it go from here?
That's like Skinny Love.
Yeah,
track
the first album.
Yeah,
it finished. Nobody was paying attention to it. So that was a rocket ship. And that really established me, because it was one of those early viral moments back in the blog days. You remember where everything was driven by the blogs to decide what was cool.
This is like 02?
2007 and 8.
7, okay. And can you describe a little bit more about like what the nature of that working relationship was with Bon Iver, the manager, and the labels? Were you kind of the the liaison between?
Well, this is something that gets challenging when you're a lawyer, because, and it was less challenging then because at the time I wasn't really worried about billing and collecting because nobody in my law firm was expecting it. I had to charge something. I had an hourly rate and stuff like that, but they were way more concerned that I do my work that was being handed to me, my partners, that was really making money than whatever I was kind of building on the side. So because I was working with a manager who was really smart and really passionate, but really young and green, and because I was not necessarily young, I was 40, but I was definitely green. I was definitely figuring it out. So we were kind of figuring it out together. And, without revealing much about what the actual process was, it's like working with a challenge when you have an artist who's suddenly very popular and is completely uncompromising about the creative vision. That's the important lesson, because, backing up from Bon Iver or anything else, if you look at all the artists I worked with over my career, and there've been a lot of them have been very popular, but for the most part, they've been very art forward and very focused on the integrity of their creative work. Right. So what I learned when I was working with corporate clients like real estate developers and banks and stuff like that is that the reason why you hire a transactional lawyer if you're a big corporation is because you want to manage risks to make sure that nothing interferes with your business model, right? If you're developing a property, you want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to prevent you from opening the business. Are there environmental concerns? Are there, can you get access? Is it, like things that kind of bleed into creativity a little bit like branding, but really is about commerce. Like, Regions Bank, everything is in that green color. So they have a trademark registered for that green color, of course. That's really branding, although there's kind of a creative element to it. But when you work with creative artists of all sorts, and I think Bon Iver is a good example, is it's not like trying to make as much money as possible from the music. It's about trying to make music that is a pure expression of that person's creative vision and hoping it connects with an audience. But not saying like, oh, how can we make this more commercial? And I've had plenty of experiences with plenty of different clients over the years where decisions are made that are contrary to the interest of making money, like walking away from $1 million opportunity because it doesn't feel right, or because it's not going to be something that the fans like, or whatever. It's just, it's never about a cash in because it's longer term. And if a true creative artist with a true creative vision compromises their creative vision for commerce, they will suffer in the long run. Yeah. Including financially. So sure. You could make an argument that it's entirely a financial conversation, but I can tell you that it's not.
And you were able to weather some of these like short-term, not disappointments, but see that happening. And my feeling is that you were sort of preparing for this your whole life by being the kind of artist you were, going at it the way you were. You didn't grow up in LA going to Poison shows, being part of the scene and like wondering how to like turn this into $1 million all the time. You're like, let's go out and play the clubs. And so when you were working with those artists your whole life because you were them, so working with them in a different capacity, it's kind of hand in glove.
I think the different pivots that I've made, if we're back to self-reinvention, it's been drawing on the experiences I've had. So including now, I'm doing music deals now again. I was working at Concord running a record label for 5 years.
Yeah, I wanted, maybe this is a good segue into that. So you came to Nashville from Birmingham. You worked at Loeb & Loeb, big law firm, music law firm.
I met you when I first came here. I remember I met you in Santa's Pub.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
You were part of an amazing cast of characters that I met when I first came to town. And actually, that was a really great, but also kind of disorienting moment in my life, because when I started in law practice, my oldest child, my daughter Anna, who's 21 now, junior in college, she was born at the end of my first year in law school. And then my son was born at the end of law school. And we had another kid a couple of years into practice. So not only was I building a new career as a lawyer and just working my butt off doing that, but also we had 3 small children. And Heather was working too. So I really just had my head down. It was one of those times in life that was full of joy, but not particularly fun.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It was joyous, but not particularly fun.
Well, they were down in Birmingham for a minute and you were up here in Nashville.
So this was all happening in Birmingham. So then I had the opportunity at Loeb & Loeb because I had a few artist clients become successful. The one that really got me on the map here was the Civil Wars I was working with. Mm. And really kind of brought me into the scene, the larger scene that you were part of, right? The singer-songwriter scene here, because there's a lot of focus on that artist. So my opportunity at the law firm from here was because I was building this clientele. So that was 2011. The real estate market was crap. So it took us a while to sell our house. So there was about a year to a year and a half when I was commuting up here. And suddenly it was super fun because I was going out and meeting all these people. I had to get integrated, but it's like, oh yeah, okay. There's stuff to do that's fun. That's right. And that was a little unsettling across the board. And it took getting my family here and getting roots planted here to really kind of get my bearings. But that was an amazing time. Mm-hmm. And I came to Nashville specifically because I wanted to be in the country music business.
Oh, I didn't think you would say that.
I did. Yeah. I thought you might be surprised by that, but well, because I wanted to develop an artist clientele and because I've been a huge country music fan my whole life. I grew up on country music. My old man grew up listening to Hank Williams and Carter Family and Nancy Griffith. And one of his best college buddies was a record producer, Jim Rooney. He used to send us all the stuff he did. So he, Towns and John Prine. And that's the music I grew up on. It was my dad was a folkie.
Yeah.
I love that music. And
so it would make sense in, 14-year-old John would go the opposite direction in a way. But that never really went away.
If you want me to establish my bona fides, in 2000, going further back, 1996, I released an album called Caledonia, which you can hear on platforms, which is really a country record. So I was making country music. And there's some forays and Lemonheads into country music. We were obsessed with Towns and, and Guy Clark and just Lucinda. That was music that we all just loved. So I loved country music. I wanted to be in country music, of course, on my terms. And so I moved here and Loeb & Loeb put me to work. I was working with some big country acts and learning the business, learning the ropes on Music Row and building relationships. And I finally sort of caught what I thought was my break because I found a relatively unknown artist that I thought was one of the greats. I was like, okay, this is one of the best country records I've ever heard. This is my ticket to, I was working with this artist, kind of helping him figure it out. And that was Sturgill. And that was High Top Mountains. This is in 2012. And from there, it was really interesting because I had a lot of people from Music Row explain to me why his record was not country music. Mm-hmm. And I had a similar experience with the Civil Wars. Like they were nominated for a CMA award in 2011 and a lot of people saying why they didn't deserve it. Like they're not really country music because I think the collective understanding of the Music Row community back then is that when you say country music, you mean the radio. You mean the radio format. You don't mean the sound of it. You don't mean the songwriting. You don't mean the creative approach. You mean that it's something that is, sort of acknowledged by their kind of business culture.
Yeah, and maybe some of that's changing a little bit. I'm just thinking about like Zach Bryan, who's one of the biggest country stars around today, and the record's not like oozing country.
I was reading the CMA nominations today, and I saw they nominated Zach Bryan for new artist, which I thought was funny because he should be Entertainer of the Year. There's at least one artist up for Entertainer of the Year that I don't think can sell out an arena. So he's doing a stadium tour, and yes, he's a country artist. He's at least as country as a lot of stuff that the establishment is acknowledging. So, because there's always these weird moments, like Taylor Swift's a great example where it's like, she's country until she says she's not country, and she put out Red and that was still a country record. you can't honestly say that there's really much on there that has anything to do with country music. It's a great record, but it's a pop rock record, you know? So it's like that question of, is it country back then was so disoriented to me because I was going out and hearing all these developing artists, and it was a terrible, terrible time for, you know, for the genre, because it was just all trucks and, you know, and, you know, cut off shorts and all that stuff. It was, you know, ice cold beer. Remember that? It was like everything was about ice cold beer. And then here's Sturgill's record, which is like a Stone classic. Now it's acknowledged as that, but he had to do a whole end run around the country establishment to get established. And he's kind of personally sort of begged out of it. You know, he was much more sort of genre hopping than he let on at the time. And so now he's kind of this multi-genre artist. But I think in a lot of ways that moment, you know, Sturgill's record coming out and connecting with an audience was the start of something that we're now seeing really explode into the mainstream.
All the summer will go sweetly with you by my side. All the winter chill came up on the early side. All I need is time away and something to look forward to today. All the lights will fade. Guess I fell in love with your mind. Everything we made is anywhere for someone to find. All I wish for you, my friend, is something to look forward to again. I will say your name, always keep the memory alive. Gather up the flame, keep it till the day I arrive. Someday soon, all this will be gone. Somehow it goes on and 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 on. All I pray is you to be alright and something to look forward to tonight.
So I was recruited to run Rounder Records in 2017, based largely on my track record of, you know, getting involved with artists on the rise.
In what ways was that the same, similar and different from your previous experience as a music attorney, like running a label?
I realized after 5 years of doing that I really like to work for artists. rather than, with a label developing artists, because I can be more true to the artist's vision as the artist's advisor.
Yeah, I mean, in Rounder is, famously an artist-friendly label. Concord also, I would include in that umbrella. But at the same time, it's a label, and you're on that side ultimately.
Well, I got to work with incredible people, and I think we built an incredible roster. And two of the artists that we signed when I was at Rounder are in the Hot 100 Top 40 right now because of Zach Bryan, which is really a weird turn of events. Sierra Farrell and the War and Treaty are both have hit records because they're featured on Zach Bryan's record. But I had a theory coming into that job that, and
just let me insert that really quick and comment on this. But to me, like from an indie perspective, some indie people are afraid of labels, but the War and Treaty and Sierra are great examples of what a larger label can do for your career, because on some level, those collaborations were probably the product, or those doors were opened because of that bigger reach that label offered. Am I correct in understanding that?
I think so. I feel that, and the people I worked really closely with there, Gary Pachoza, who's still there, incredibly smart, incredibly talented guy with a great ear.
I mean, a legend.
A legend, yeah. Michelle Acalato was great. She was the head of marketing there. The team that we had, very much on the same page. And we were looking for something in the artists that we signed that was very specific, which is, who are the artists who are great, the great voices in the space that have the potential to reach large audiences if developed properly. And sometimes you just feel like you're strapping into something where it's just going to go. And that was certainly the way it felt with Billy Strings, which we were very lucky to get in business with him.
Yeah, a once in a lifetime talent.
But Sierra's a good example because that did need development. And Gary made her record with her as producer in the worst part of the pandemic. And there were a lot of struggles that we experienced because a couple years into my time there, that was when everything locked down, and Concord was very locked down about things. We could only have 2 people in the studio at a time. And so we had to make the record under those conditions. But when you hear a voice like hers and you experience someone who's a natural songwriter like her, if you can use a little bit of imagination, you can imagine how that could reach a huge audience. She's really a special talent. Same with the War and Treaty. Those are both things that we had to launch in the pandemic that were very challenging. But so we were looking for raw talent because I had a strong belief that there was going to be this mainstream break for authentic roots music. And it's amazing to see it happening now. It's so wild. And I have a lot of respect for people who are in the mainstream country industry and a lot of the artists and the craft that goes into making those records and writing those songs. But there's a demand now for authenticity, which is, I think, largely driven by the fact that, there's been the striving for perfection for so long in the studio. And, now with the rise of AI tools and everything, it's like, apparently there's this desire for this kind of visceral music again, which is really exciting to me because I feel like I've seen it coming.
Yeah.
And I feel like the work I'm doing now, the artists I'm working with now, I'm drawing on 35 years of experience. Everything that I've done creatively in the industry is helping me to help artists to make the kinds of decisions that are formative for their careers.
Well, you've, from my perspective, in the East Nashville community, I've admired you and been grateful to you because you've been so generous over the years. I mean, you brokered my first sync deal, for a song, pardon the pun. And, that's just been emblematic of sort of who you are, as a member of the community who's, here to help. And, so I wonder, what brought you back to wanting to make this current record? This is kind of what I want to talk about now, because this is what's happening for you right now.
Well, I think this is something also that's come out of the pandemic. I just recently got done doing a bunch of interviews for summer associates at my law firm. which has been really interesting because these are all people who were in law school during the pandemic. And everybody's answers to these questions that we put in front of them, it's always like, well, everything changed. and I think that's true for a lot of people. I'm really grateful for that, because if it was not for the pandemic, I probably would still be doing that job. And I'm proud of everything we did, but I'm really...
That job being the Concord job.
Yeah. Maybe not, but I think it was circumstances that were brought to the fore from the pandemic that led to the chain of events that has me back in law practice. And that's a good change for me. That's been really healthy, and it's been really fun and exciting to rebuild in that way. And a couple things happened. Just before that, 2019, I lost my closest friend and collaborator, this guy, Ed Ackerson. And backing up a little bit, around the time that I first came to town, I was inspired to make music again. Well, by people like you, by being in a community of songwriters and experiencing these people's work, people like Sturgill, people I was working with, like Taylor Goldsmith from Dawes, who's a close friend and longtime client. And
I'm such a fan. The guy, great,
incredible songwriter,
great guitar player,
just such an inspiring person.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to see if I could write songs again, because I'd gone through this process of learning how to write songs for the bands I was in. And it was like, yeah, I want to do that. I don't want to be, a commercial songwriter. I want to write songs because I want to write songs.
Yeah.
I want to see if I can do good work. So I had about 4 or 5 years when I first came here when I would, spend some time on the weekends working on songs. And eventually I got to the point where I found a collaborator, this guy, Gregory Latimer, has a studio called Make Sound Good in East Nashville. Incredible creative guy. He was a guy I'd known a little bit in the 90s. And I started just going to his garage studio and kind of plunking away a bit here and there. And around the time I went into the job at Concord, I had 6 or 7 songs done. And I was sending tapes to my friend Ed, and the intention was always to get to his studio in Minneapolis. And Ed is a producer. He produced a record for the Jayhawks. He did some stuff for Replacements and, a bunch of Minneapolis stuff. And he had a band called Polera, which I was sort of part of early on, but went on to have a lot of success up there. So he was a very established guy. He had a recording studio that was very successful there. He just started a family. He had a young daughter, and he got pancreatic cancer and had a pretty quick decline, and he passed away in 2019.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well, I mean, that's part of the rub of living to be, to be, as old as I am, is that eventually that'll happen to you. Everyone's gonna, if you're lucky, you outlive your parents, but you have to lose your parents. You have to lose people close to you. So Ed was really the first person that was that important and special to me that I lost. And so I decided that to honor our friendship, that one thing I had to do was finish the record that we've been working on. So, then everything locked down, and I managed in 2019 to do one final session with him, and that's the song Something to Look Forward To. We recorded the music, and then I took a couple years to write the lyric, because it's very hard to write about something like that. And really caught a head of steam because of feeling driven by what he would want. And Ed was a very inspiring guy, and he is a guy with a really strong work ethic. And, he was always telling me to get my act together and, actually get something done. But also, I'm at the point in my life where we have 3 kids. 2 of them are in college now. One is in high school. She's about to start driving. We're at the point in parenting where it's not quite as heavy a lift as it used to be. And so I have some more time, and I try to keep healthy. I want to live a long time. My parents are still living and healthy in their 80s. I got hopefully a while on this planet. I'm hoping. So what do I want to do in that time? I want to keep working because I love my work, but I want to keep working on my terms. And at some point I realized I don't care if I'm successful with music or not. I don't particularly care if it's popular. What I do care about is that I put in the work and actually make something that I feel is great, that I can share with people, and hopefully it'll inspire somebody.
Well, it inspired me. And
Good.
it's
I'm
a
successful
solid
already then.
record. And the songwriting perspective comes from a real human being living on planet Earth, which is the kind of songwriting I like.
Well, I have a one specific rule about songwriting now, which is I don't put it out until it's good. I don't put it out unless it's an authentic expression of something that's real about me. It doesn't have to be autobiographical, but it has to be authentic. And I think creative people understand that kind of authenticity. If you're authentic to yourself. A lot of my early songwriting efforts were, oh yeah, I wish I could write a song. I'd spend all day listening to the Replacements and try to write a Replacement song, you know?
Yeah. Doesn't really work very well.
Yeah, maybe it's a good song, maybe not, but it's not authentic. But that's how you learn how to write songs. All my early songs I wrote in high school sound like Velvet Underground songs because I was obsessed with the Velvet Underground and just write it with a couple chords.
Yeah.
But they're not. They weren't authentic to me or my experience. Now, I want, if somebody actually takes the time to listen to my record, I want to communicate something that potentially, you know, will be a conversation with a listener that's authentic.
Yeah.
That's it. And I know when it's right. And I'm writing songs for another one now, and I'm not going to make a record until I have the songs. And I'm the only one that knows if they're ready or not. So those 10 songs that I put on that record, 9 of which I wrote, 1 of which Ed wrote, are, you know, an authentic expression of who I am. And that's why I'm willing and grateful to be able to share it.
Yeah. There's this idea in creativity that it's really, the creative work is more about what the work reveals to the creator about him or herself,
Right.
As being of the primary importance. And everything else that comes out of that is wonderful if it's noticed or commercially successful or so on. But really that the true joy and the worth of the work is that self-revelation. I think that's, you know, what I get out of your idea of being authentic to yourself, and also this kind of thirst for authenticity in the culture at large at this moment. And it's also why, for some reason, I don't worry about this, the AI revolution that may or may not be coming, because I was never really interested in writing music other than for like, did I like it first? And then what I've somehow managed to find a large enough audience on planet Earth that I've made a career out of it, on, you know, my terms or whatnot. But the thing that was primary and still is just like, do I like this? And is this feel like in that terrible cauldron of creation when you're actually in the trenches trying to like find a song in there somewhere? That is a real mystical process. It's mysterious is maybe a more accurate way of putting it. I don't know what's going on in that motion, but it's not exactly comfortable. But something in that on a good day comes out of that, and you're like, whoa, that feels like me. You know, I think that's I think that you can relate to that. And
Well,
that's what seems like is happening in your new record.
One of the changes that I made, so there's a song that I particularly like on my record called Lancaster, which is kind of a ballad. Aaron Reyes is the harmony voice in there. What a star. Yeah, incredible talent. I had some great people help me on that. But my mix engineer, Paul, the guy from the Zero Boys I mentioned earlier, he mixed the record and mastered it, and he tried to turn it into a duet. He's like, this needs to be a conversation. It was like, yeah, well, if anybody cares about this record, we can do that remix later. But I had 9 songs for the record, and I was going to call that a day. 9 songs is enough for an album. And I was going to Gregory's house to record the last song, which is a song called Trouble Land. And I was having a harder time writing there in the home stretch. I think because I was putting pressure on myself, like, oh, I got to write more songs. You know, I'd have, you know, hours and hours and not coming up with much. And then I sat down, and there's kind of like a music box melody that drives that song. And I think in another phase of my life as a songwriter, I would not have gone down that rabbit hole, because I would have thought like, well, it's stolen from somewhere. It's too simple. You know, there's not enough going on here to really make a song. But because I liked the way it sounded, I went with it. And I had the song written in about 30 minutes. The lyrics just came very naturally, almost in a flow. And I think it's one of the best songs on the record. And I know that as a younger writer, I would not have written that song because I would not have been open. You wouldn't have trusted to the idea because I would have rejected it for being too simple or too obvious.
Yeah.
And so now one of the techniques I use as a songwriter is if I have an idea that appeals to me on any level musically, like a melodic phrase or something like that, I'm going to run it all the way down until I know that it sucks. You know?
Yeah.
Because it might be good. And the difference between this record and other records that I made is mostly that it's simpler. Mm-hmm. The music's simpler, the chord progressions are simpler, the melodies are simpler. And so the other thing that's different about it is that I really took the time to get the lyrics right. This is the first time I've ever printed the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So if you buy the LP, you get a printout of the lyrics. I didn't do that before because I wasn't really proud of the lyrics, because I didn't do the work to feel like this is actually the exact statement I want to make. I just, I was too distracted or too lazy or something like that to really follow through like that. Not to say I didn't write any songs that I'm proud of back then, but I didn't really put in the work. Mm-hmm. So now if it takes me 10 years to make a record, that's fine. Because nobody's waiting for very, very few people waiting for a John Strohm record. God bless them if they are. Mm-hmm. But, it isn't like, the next Zach Bryan record or whatever, where there's millions of people around the world waiting for it. This is my work on my terms. And my feeling about it is I'm basically a hobbyist, but I'm also sharing something that I've actually crafted and put the time in to feel like I hope people take the time to experience it,
Well, and there's not very many people in the industry that have, been somebody that can walk through a contract for an artist and broker that, and then willing to be vulnerable themselves and sing a song into a microphone that they wrote. That's not a common dual existence. So
I personally think it would be hard to advise artists if you're not an artist. I really do.
I don't think that's a common feeling though in your trade.
Well, I think everything I draw on is from my experiences.
Yeah.
Like I can talk to you about touring in a van or whatever because I've done it. I did it for 10 years.
Yeah.
I can talk to you about running out of money and not knowing how I was going to get my rent paid because I've been there.
Yeah.
I can talk to you about what it feels like to go all in as an artist because I've done it. And I can talk to you about the creative process because I've spent, thousands of hours engaging in that. And I'm not saying that to be a music lawyer, you have to be a musician to qualify. I'm just saying my own toolbox, the reason I want to do this work, the reason that I think I'm well suited for this work is because I really, really, truly, deeply ideologically care about protecting the rights and interests of artists, to give them the opportunity to do the work, unobstructed. I want to find ways for artists to navigate the music business where they can do their work on their terms. When I talk to great artists, like real artists, that's what they care about. They don't care so much about making money. They want to make money. They want to make a living. They care much more about the integrity of their work. And I feel like that's why I've developed the skill set to be able to go through that 40-page contract and look for those, those couple of words in there that are going to give the label the right to make an AI model your voice or whatever, because I think that revolution is coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be weird, and I think it's going to be kind of great, but it's also going to be kind of terrible. It's going to result in an ocean of mediocrity, which is already kind of out there. I mean, you think about what technology's done to music. It's enhanced creativity. It's also been resulted in a lot of mediocrity. Think about the fact that anybody can sound a certain way by, dialing in the auto-tune or, putting everything on a grid. It's like the idea of making music with a vibe and with a, humanity to it is getting lost.
Yeah. I mean, part of the mission of this podcast is it's part of my own personal mission. And it's a mission I've been on for 10 years. I had a precursor to this called Wigby. This is probably in 2011, which was like I had a camera rig and I had a buddy that was a good engineer, and we'd basically do like a tiny desk, like field recordings of artists, because what I love watching and listening to is a person who can write a great song or a very good song and sing it well and play it at the same time. That's where I live. And this podcast is that, it's just like, I love these collaborations because, they're just what they are. And what they are is, something that happened in place and time between two people at this moment. And it's precious and it's unAIable.
Yeah. Well, I like when communities come together, creative people that want to collaborate. That's a beautiful thing. And I also think that one of the byproducts of the evolution of generative AI and creative pursuits is going to be people having a real hunger for human authenticity. Like, what are things that people can do unassisted by technology? I think that's one of the reasons why suddenly, these Appalachian artists are super popular, is because it's some dude with a guitar in front of a microphone out in the woods, just singing his or her heart out. That's great. Singing their heart out.
Yeah.
That's real to people, and it should be, because art serves a lot of purposes, but I think the primary purpose of art is sharing human experience, right? And connection.
Yeah, man.
And that's what interests me. That's what keeps me in the business. That's one of the things that keeps me wanting to make music is wanting to make those connections.
Well, speaking of making those connections, do you want to play a song or two?
Absolutely.
Let's get set up for that. And man, I just want to say thank you for your time and perspective. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for having me. 1, 2, 3. It's most unreal, and you do anything you can think of in order to not have to deal, searching for life after bomb on whatever stepped in the jar. Can't believe that you're still where you are. You're still hoping and still hoping. Still feeling a little bit spacey. Still see tracers when you move your hands. And the ringing in your ears is a choir. Beating down the lane marker's wire. Can't believe that you're still where you are. You're still hoping, still hoping.
Hey, thanks for watching. Click the like and subscribe button if you wouldn't mind. You can click over here to watch another complete episode, or click here to watch a playlist of the songs of the Morse Code podcast. You know you want to. You know you want to. You know you want to.